All right, Wednesday afternoon. Come on in, guys. Let's listen to some stories. Come one, come all. Come see Jojo, the dog-faced boy. He neither eats, nor sleeps, nor crawls, nor creeps. He's 15 inches across the eyes and smells like a wolf. He's Jojo, the dog-faced boy. What's up, guys? Ladies, gentlemen. Come on in. Let's do this. Grab a cup of coffee. Get your water. Come on in, guys. I'm on early. Like 6.5 hours earlier than normal. 10 p.m. is my normal start time. But I got some free time, so let's do it this way. Anybody out there? Come on in, guys. Stop swiping. Don't go too far. Just stop and come on in. What do you say? Bum, bum, ba, da, 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 da. Okay, there we go. I had this thing set on dark mode, and I don't think that was the best option. So I found there's two eyeballs, or two sets of eyeballs. Come on in, guys. Who's there? Come on in. Come on in. I'm gonna share a few stories here in a minute. Dave Murdoch. Now, Dave, have you been here before? Seems like I remember the name. No? Yes? What's up, Mr. Dave? Good afternoon. Scoo! What's going on? Where are you guys from? Ah, well, welcome to the first time. Where have I heard that name, Dave? Where's Dave Murdoch? Isn't that a actor or character from a movie or show? The heck? Where do I know that name? Lexington. Welcome from Lexington and Newcastle, England. I'm on the East Coast in New Jersey. Gosh, sorry about that. My throat is coated with whatever. And the subwoofer from Vegas. That's the name they gave me. Magnus! What's going on? Another UK visitor. Scoo! Magnus, do you know each other? Welcome, guys. And what's your age group, guys? Are you in school, out of school, parents, grandfathers, grandmothers? I'm a 62-year-old dad / subwoofer at 40. Wait, 40, 50. Doc. Wait, how did you find me, Doc? I mean, Josh, at 3:30 in the afternoon. And Dave's, you got me beat. You're the eldest. Dave? 42 for Scoo. And Josh, I believe, is 45. I keep guessing on your age, Josh, and you tell me every time. Yeah, 62-year-old dad slash grandfather for myself. No way, Linda. Linda's the senior of the group. Have you been here before, Linda? Welcome. Yeah, tell me you guys' background. All us older folk seem to have some cool stories. That's right, but I'm so young at heart. Here, let me turn that music down a bit more. Yeah, where were you born, Linda? All you guys. I was born in San Diego, California, and now on the East Coast. Don't ask. Awesome. My trustworthy regular attendee, Josh Eason, Clarksville, Tennessee, where all the villes are, Linda. Sevierville, Clarksville, and John from Lexington. Yep. Magnus. Wow, check it out. We got all older folk in the room. Can I include you in that category there, subwoofer? I mean, SCU? That's just right after they closed the cave down. What are you referring? I'm sorry, Linda, what? What cave are you referring to? Well, I was thinking, oh, your dad, that's, I thought about that, Linda, when you said that. I said, I wonder if she's thinking of the caveman. That is ambulance, Magnus. Yeah, let's see, where is it? Yeah, right there. That's one of those, what they call box ambulances, or also known as, oh heck, Gary, don't forget the name of those ambulances. They're, I'll think of it in a minute. No, not old enough to be in Vietnam, John. Think about it. Vietnam was where? Somewhere between 63 and 72, 75? I was born in 62. So if I'm 62 now, that means I was born in 62. 62 plus 62 equals 24, 1,024, 124. So no, I was just a baby during the Vietnam War. My dad would have been like a candidate of the Vietnam. Actually, he was in Vietnam for 4 years. Luton. Let's see, Magnus. You call ambulances Luton? Is that right? I actually have my Marine Corps hat that I wore over in Iraq, 2004, 2005. That's actually a Navy insignia because I was one of their corpsmen or their medics providing medical support. No, they call them something else, Magnus. They're called, in the emergency medicine circles, that type of ambulance is called a I'm drawing a brain fart. They convert them Actually, well, I don't know if they still do, in Ohio. And you would drive, we would actually send somebody back to Ohio to pick them up and actually drive them back to San Diego or Southern California once the conversions were done. But yeah, they'll typically take a van cab and they'll do the conversion on the back and put that box on the back. Now, I was a Navy corpsman providing medical support for the Marines. The United States Marine Corps does not have their own medical department. The Navy provides medical support for the United States Marines. They always have. As a matter of fact, the Marine Corps are technically under the Navy, the command of the Navy. They don't like to admit that. But yes, they are. The Marine Corps reports to the Navy. The Army and the Air Force, they have their own medical departments. Magnus, you have, can I get a mod? Jay, I don't have the ability right now to do that. If I had my phone, it would be simple. Hold that thought, Jay. So, Magnus, what's your background in the military? Lancashire Fusilier, what is that? Sorry. You have to educate me on some of the language over there. Josh is Ranger Special Forces. Iraq and Afghanistan. I was in Iraq 2004, 2005. Oh, the UK military. Sergeant. Infantry. Okay. So, equivalent to the Army? Is that the UK Army? And what years, Magnus, or are you currently? Oh, okay. So paramilitary. That's interesting. But they allow you to deploy with the military? Or they do deploy them with the military? Gotcha. Okay, Josh. Not a problem. Cool, Magnus. And I'm sorry, you already, I'm scrolling back as far as how old you are. 52. So you've been there, did that, and now you're out, separated, or retired? Yeah, I signed. Here, I'll tell you a bit about how I ended up in the military. That'll be a opportunity to start talking about yeah, the content of this channel. Well, in a indirect way. As far as the military, I was in high school just like any other high school kid when I first started getting that, that bait thrown at me to join the military. The recruiters coming to our high school Batman, or no, Batmom, sorry. Welcome back. And yeah, the recruiters coming to our high school, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, setting up on our football field. I remember them erecting their kiosks around the. We had a football field that we hosted many schools from all over the county. And so the military came during graduation time, my senior year in high school, and they did their spiel trying to recruit, high school students. And I didn't take the bait back then. And then life events started unfolding, and I got older and eventually got married and became a daddy, a husband. Um, I've, yeah, let me continue. And then uh, life events ended up taking me from California to Oregon, the northwest of the United States, and then down to Louisiana. Won't go into detail. And then when I came back to San Diego, California, I had gotten some information about a program that incorporated your civilian experience directly into the military. For instance, if you were a auto mechanic in the civilian world, they could take that talent, that skill, and apply it directly into the military, doing the same thing, taking care of motor vehicles. In the Marine Corps, they have a motor transportation division, or Motor T for short. So you see how that's directly, laterally applicable. So I was a paramedic in the civilian world. I started in the business in 1980. When was that? 1989. Went to EMT school, emergency medical technician. And then I was working full time at the same time, indirectly. I should say another profession, and got introduced to emergency medicine through a coworker actually that I was working with. And then I started pursuing that. And my goal was to become a paramedic at the paramedic level, which is advanced life support compared to basic life support. So I started in 1989, and eventually in 1993, I went back to paramedic school, went back to school to become a paramedic, and got licensed as a paramedic in 1993. So I was in EMS, emergency medical services, from 1989 up to 93, and then continued up until 1998, 99, when I had returned from Louisiana and opened my suitcase and found some literature that I had brought back from Louisiana about this program where they would you could apply your civilian experience into the military. And that was like, I've always wondered about the military, and I never did join back when I was out of high school. And I was 36 years old at that time in 1999. Let's see, I'd been 37, but it was before my 37th birthday, right around May or June of 1999. And so I decided, well, I'm not going to know any more about this program unless I go into a recruiter's office and ask them about it. So I went into the recruiter's office one afternoon, and I'm, again, 36 years old. The recruiters behind the desk were like 23, 22, 23 years old. And, I went into the Army side of the trailer and spoke with the recruiter. And he's like, "Oh, what do you do in the civilian world?" I said, "I'm a paramedic." He's like, "Oh, we can make you a medic." And I said, well, talk to me. What does that entail? He says, well, we can bring you in as a reservist, and the S's. Um, we can bring you in as a reservist, signing an 8-year contract, and you will drill every weekend, 1 weekend per month. So your civilian job, you continue working your civilian job, and every month, 1 weekend, your employer requires to accommodate uh, your reserve duty, and they let you, if you, for instance, if you were scheduled to work that Saturday, Sunday, they would give you that weekend off, and you go to your military base and do your Saturday, Sunday, and work Saturday, Sunday on the base. And then, thank you, Magnus, for filling in S's. So I was like, oh, okay, thank you. No decisions today. Thank you very much. And he did his best, to set the hook. And then I walked across the hallway to the Navy side, and same thing. What do you do in the civilian world? Oh, I'm a paramedic. Oh, we can make you a corpsman. And a corpsman is equivalent to a medic. It's just the Navy, the nautical or the Navy term for a medic. So I thought, all right, Navy, Army. There was no Marine. Well, there isn't a Marine recruiter for a corpsman because that's the Navy side. The Navy provides medical support for the Marines. So they didn't have a Air Force recruiter. So I went home with, brochures and paperwork from the Army and the Navy. And I thought, well, if I do this, which one am I going to choose? Well, my dad, I remember seeing a plaque on my dad's wall in his bedroom that he was in the Navy from, I'm going to guess, 65 to 69 or somewhere around there. So that was always in my head, but no other family military, memories that I had. And I was in between jobs as a paramedic. I had just came back from Louisiana. Again, that's a long story, another story. So I left the job in Louisiana when I came back to California, and I was jobless and actually staying at my mom's place at 36 years old in the interim until I figured out where to go and what to do next. So I had this information about the military, and I thought, well, I need to get to work ASAP. And, this would provide some security, a little bit of medical insurance, not a full package, but at least some. And I decided, well, let's do this. I've always wondered about the military, and I could do this 1 weekend per month. It didn't sound like too much of a commitment. And there's nothing going on right now in 1999, no conflict. So I met the recruiter, the Navy recruiter, that 23-year-old kid at a Denny's restaurant one afternoon. And he brought the whole folder of paperwork, and he started the process of basically signing me into the United States Navy. And eventually, and he told me he was going to bring me in at a higher rate, a higher rank, because of my civilian experience and my civilian schooling. But I would have to go through boot camp, and they had a boot camp for this particular program. It was called Advanced Pay Grade, APG school, where they brought everybody that was going through that boot camp were in the same position that I was in. They had a civilian job. They were bringing it into the military. We had the youngest was a 23-year-old girl, and she did like secretarial type work. And they brought her in. And then our eldest, believe it or not, was a 52-year-old man that was a construction worker in Boston, Massachusetts, and he became a CB, and that's the letter CB, or Construction Battalion, in the Navy. So they apply his construction background directly into the military. And so I found out that they had this program, something like this program, ever since World War II, where they took civilians and brought them into the military. And I didn't know that. You guys maybe first time hearing it as well. And I thought, whoa, never knew that. Taking civilians, bringing them into the military. You don't have to train them. They already have a skill set, and they can apply it directly into the military, and voila, they don't have to spend any money putting them to school. And it was the same for me. They looked at my resume basically and said, oh, okay, you're a paramedic. You've already been to school, and it entailed these classes, these certifications, these licenses, and they try to apply it laterally. So I came in as an E4, which is third class petty officer in the Navy. It'd be equivalent to like a corporal in the Marine Corps. And then after corporal comes sergeant. Wait, help me out. Corporal, lance corporal, or is it lance corporal, corporal, lance corporal, whatever it is. But sergeant is E5. They brought me in as an E4. And then eventually I became an E5 a couple years later. Went through the testing for it and passed it and got my E5, or second class petty officer. That's the 2 bars that you see right here. 1 bar, it's kind of the opposite in the Navy. 1 bar is third class petty officer. 2 bars is second class petty officer, and 3 bars is first class petty officer. So it's kind of the opposite. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. So I came into the United States Navy as a third class petty officer in June of 1999, 2 months before my 37th birthday. The cutoff age at the time was 37 years old. So that's why the recruiters were trying to recruit me ASAP, because I had 2 months to go before my 37th birthday. The cutoff age now, today, is 43 years old. Sorry, I'm burping. Throughout the years, they upped it to 42, 5 years more. And then I just spoke to a recruiter here recently when I was getting my haircut at the barber. And he told me the cutoff age is 43 now. And I went, imagine that. So how was boot camp? Bat Mom asked. That's a good question. You wonder, you're not 18 years old. Presley, welcome back. And none of us were 18-year-old. The youngest was 23, this young lady, and then the eldest was a 52-year-old man. And, most of us were in relatively good shape, at least enough for them to kill us on the grinder. The grinder is the asphalt, by the way. That's a nickname in the military for the asphalt. Out on the asphalt, they call it the grinder. And you have a minimum requirement in each branch of the military as to how much physical PT that they give you, physical training. In the Navy, it's a minimum of 3 days per week. And during those 3 days, I'm going back to boot camp, by the way, Bat Mom. We had to adhere to that minimum requirement. So 3 days a week, we were getting our butts handed to us. And yeah, they hurt us. They hurt us pretty good. I remember my abdomen was so ripped after the first day, and it was a female, believe it or not, a female physical fitness instructor out on the grinder. And apparently she was a civilian brought in to do, they hired her to kill us on the grinder. But it was a condensed version of boot camp, but the amount of book work and training that we went through was equivalent to what the 18, 19-year-olds, 17, 18, 19-year-olds went through. They just had to condense it. Normally boot camp is 8 weeks, and for us it was 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks or 4 weeks? No, it was 2 weeks. And all the full-time military always, they wave their hand at us like, you didn't go through crap. And it's like, well, you don't know. We were up at 4:30 in the morning and all day long till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We were either in school or in training, doing the hands-on training. And they condensed it where we had no free time. There was just nothing more. We had one day off, and that was Sunday, where we actually got to go to church or wander around the base. We really couldn't go outside. There really wasn't any time. I think some did, but I didn't. So anyways, boot camp was, memorable, and you just were learning stuff, every day, whether it was firefighting, the basic military requirements, what they call it, BMR. Batmom, ruck marches, being yelled at and not being able to punch the person in the throat would not work for me. Well, believe me, Batmom, you're kind of getting where you're coming from, the mindset that you go into it. You're a civilian. You're nearly a 40-year-old. Some of us were 40 and above. And bringing that civilian mindset into the military is conflicting, and it is. Everyone is already a mother, a father, or a leader. They work professionally in a workplace, some of them. And now we got 23-year-olds, telling us what to do and what not to do. But they did say at the very beginning, most of you are older than we are. So therefore, we expect a lot more maturity out of you guys. And our tolerance for BS isn't. We're not going to deal with that. And so we expect that from you. And for the most part, everybody was good to go. And we didn't have to, we didn't conflict with that. But there's always one or two that spoil the dozen for the rest of us. And it did happen. One guy had a problem with alcohol, apparently, and brought that problem in with him. And on his day off, he goes out and not only gets his fix, but he brings it with him into his locker onto the base. And we're like, what? What are you doing? We've only got 2 weeks of this, for God's sakes, 14 days. And now you're going to, you just ruined it for all of us. And, they teach you your weakest link is, your how's it go? Is your weakest link. And it was, whenever somebody screws up, we all pay for it. Yeah. And of course he got caught. And then it just, it was, the rest is history. But other than that, everybody knew, it was a rigid schedule, and there was no time to do, strong is the weakest link. Thank you. It was, it was quite a surprise to all of a sudden get the word, that so-and-so screwed up. What'd he do? He brought alcohol onto the base and they found it in his locker. Like, what in the world are you thinking? So, other than that, it was just boot camp, getting wet, swimming, going to the range, it's specific to the Navy. PT. Um, it was in. Uh, let's see, where was boot camp? Was in. Believe it or not, guess where boot camp was? Back in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I had just left and where I just came from. Yes, I was chasing a lady in New Orleans. So I had just left that drama, 8 months of drama, and then I get sent right back there, literally within 10 miles from her house. And there I was in Navy boot camp at Naval Air Station, New Orleans. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Voodoo Hoodoo capital. Exactly. Yeah, good old Bourbon Street and all that. Yeah, we didn't have any time to do any of that while we were there. Nada. It was fly in, boot camp, and fly out and go home. Yeah. And then when I got home, my first duty station was San Diego down at 32nd Street. I'm saying it as if I lived there. It's because I did. I lived in San Diego. So I knew the location well, and I reported to boot camp. I mean, my first muster or first roll call down in San Diego. Give me 1 second, guys. I got to pass some word to my son here real quick. Okay, sorry about that. We got some logistics going on here at home, and I gotta make sure that got taken care of. So, yeah, that was my first duty station. Was 32nd Street. Even being older, Bat Mom, and presenting yourself in front of a group of a new unit. Everybody's looking at you, and they assume that you're a veteran. That you've got some years in service, and I was just as green as they were. You know, a lot of them were younger, um, or a mix of the above. And they look at my rank, and they realize, oh, they figure, oh, you've been here for, you know, 5 or more years with that rank. And it's like, nope, first day, you know, as I'm staring at their collar device, and wondering if I need to salute or not. Because you salute commissioned officers, but you don't salute enlisted officers. So I was right out of the book as they get, right off the grinder from New Orleans, figuring out how to wear my uniform properly and who to salute, who not to salute. So anyhow, that's how I got into the military. I was a 37-year-old, and I signed an 8-year contract. So from I was 37 till I was 45, in 1999 to 2007. From the ones that started from the beginning, I would think. Resentment as far as like I should have done that. Is that what you mean? Oh, as far as, yeah, he hasn't been through what I've been through. Exactly. I understand. And yes, there was that's always the talk about reservists or those that came in like I did through this program. Yeah, that's always, even over in Iraq. Yeah, they, once they hear that, oh, you were one of them. It's like, well, I went through civilian training as opposed to military training. But they did have a point, and that was I didn't have that military mindset that you do get after a number of years doing it full time. And it's different than being a civilian. But yeah, I would, it's kind of, it goes both ways. I've got a skill set that they wished I had, but I don't have the training that they had in that particular environment. And I have my own, now that I've seen both sides of it, I have my own theory on that, and that is in from a medical standpoint, that is. In the military, Josh any of those that have been in the military can attest to this. You're always in training for your job. And for instance, as an infantryman, or special forces, unless you're actually doing the actual work and going on actual missions, you're not getting the what it's going to be like. You're only getting what you can mock up or train for what it's going to be like. But when you get put in the actual position to do it, as Josh can attest to, it's an eye-opening experience to get shot at for the first time, or actually have somebody else shooting back at you, as opposed to just going through drills and scenarios, with each other, shooting blanks at each other or whatever. But from a medical standpoint, when you don't necessarily need to be in war to practice medicine. All you got to be is in a hospital or at a first aid station or in an ambulance, on a base, because wherever there's people, there's a need for medical support, whether there's a war or not. People go through lumps, bumps, and bruises and pain and suffering, whether you're getting shot at or not. At a football game, at a in your own home, at the market, wherever. So my point is, somebody that's trained in the military as a medic, they're not running around the civilian world doing their job. They're running around on their base doing their job. And people are people, whether they're in uniform or out of uniform. They still get lumps, bumps, and bruises and get sick and injured, on the base as well as at war. So they're practicing either in a hospital setting, or they do have ambulances on base. But typically, if it's they don't have paramedics on base. They've got corpsmen or medics, and they don't perform at the advanced level that I do as a civilian inside of an ambulance. We're pushing and administering medications at a advanced level, putting electricity through people's bodies when needed, and inserting devices inside of their airway, and doing that type of stuff as at the paramedic level. On the base, they'll typically what we call out in the civilian world, cut butt for the hut, meaning they'll pick up somebody that's critically injured. Let's say it happened on the base, and they'll just cut butt for the hut to the emergency room and deliver them to the emergency room, where they'll be doing the advanced procedures right there in the emergency room. But they're not doing it out in the ambulance. And that's where, when I come into the military, I have that experience. So they can benefit. That's why they started incorporating civilian experience into the military, because we have a skill set that the corpsman or the medic might not have. And so you can kind of see, the benefit from their standpoint. They're getting a skill set that, they may not use in the military, and vice versa. The military people, having been in the military and know the whole military structure, They have a lot to teach me, and they did. I was I was as new as an 18-year-old coming into the military. So, yeah, there was resentment, but at the same time, once they get to know you and realize, oh, wow, okay, and vice versa, they suture as medics. We don't do any suturing, out in the civilian world. That's just not in our protocol. They don't allow that kind of stuff out in the civilian world. That's beyond our pay grade. But they are lenient with that in the military, and they teach them how to suture. So you're kind of walking on eggshells, at the beginning, and even 8 years later, I still couldn't say, um, I know what you're going through as a full-time, um, a full-time, military. I'm struggling for the word, um, active duty. As an active duty corpsman, for example, or medic. I never was able to say well, no, I can't say that. I did serve 1 year of continuous duty, active duty, and that was in Iraq. That was actually considered active duty, where I was, day after day, every day, for what it was about, from beginning to end, it was about 10 months, 10 or 11 months, where I was in the military, employed by the military for 10 months straight, every day. Where back in the States, I was only doing it one weekend per month. And that was my contract. One weekend per month for 8 years. And then 2001 happened. 9/11 happened. And that's when everybody started getting the phone call and getting deployed. And I was part of that. OIF, OEF, to Iraq with the Marines. Yeah, well, here, Bat Mom, you can actually relate with Josh. Well, he's picking his kids up, but um, yeah, even though the pay isn't what you would really expect or what you would think as a civilian, what the military are actually getting paid, it would actually hopefully anger a lot of people to realize how little we actually got paid over there. But because we were at war, and it's called hazardous duty pay, as you found out, um, the pay does, that is in addition to their base rate. So it is, you know, it is more attractive, but what a way to get more money. You got to go to war. Otherwise, you're making the minimum or the base pay. Yeah, I mentioned before that my hourly rate as a E5, that was a second class, that's this rank, petty officer, was $11 per hour during war in 2004, 2005. That was without hazardous duty pay. And to this day, I couldn't tell you how much that was. And it was direct deposit, so I never saw it. My wife got it. And she was making triple what I was making anyway. So it was like a supplemental paycheck. She's a nurse. My wife's a nurse with a bachelor's degree. Matter of fact, that's what she's doing um, right now, or being picked up from. Yep. Let me turn my overhead fan on here. I'm starting to get a little stuffy. Excuse me, excuse me. So any questions from you guys in the audience there? I know I kind of ran through that pretty quick, but uh, that's my story as to how I got into the military at a later age. Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for that. No. Well, the next morning he cheated on me. Where did he do that? Wait, I gotta. It's like where did he? When did he have time to do that? I thought he was being deployed. That where, where do they have free time? I'm trying to recall my deployment. Um, while you're answering, I was enlisted 8 years, 1999 to 2007, and I had the option to do 20 years, and get my pension or my retirement. But when I got back from Iraq, I was 40, like I said, 40, let's say at the time I was 43, and my wife was 8 months pregnant. Um, and she was 8 months pregnant when I got home with my 19-year-old that just went to go pick her up. Um, and I decided, you know what? I need to, I've got other priorities here. Hold on a second. I'm trying to focus this the best I can. I got other things cooking here that I need to focus on. And the rumor was, or as in the Navy they call rumors, scuttlebutt. The scuttlebutt was that I was more than likely going to Afghanistan next in 2005 or 2005, 2006. And I decided, you know what? My EOS or end of service was June of 2007, and here it was May of 2005, April, May when I got home from Iraq. And I thought, you know what? I got about a year and a half left of my contract. I need to I need to step out of this, or I'm going to end up in a place that I don't want to be. Not as a ground corpsman with the Marines, humping around the hills of Afghanistan. And the rest is history. I decided, you know what? It's time to thank you very much. It was a cool ride. It was the end of my Mr. Toad's Wild Ride uh, medical career. Um, oh my gosh, we're gonna hear the details. I asked for it and now I got it. Uh, he left his shirt. He left his shirt. Oh my gosh. Sleeping everyone and their mama. Oh my gosh. Aw. Oh, how unfortunate. Right after you had your son. Nice. Oh well. Married most of my life. Had no job, experience, no money, and he took the only TV when he left us. And he took the only TV. Good Lord. Were you able to, well, you're obviously alive. Did you survive? Did he end up having to, support you with alimony and all that? Oh my gosh, dude. I'm talking to your ex. It's like, oh my gosh, dude. That's pretty brutal. Oh, I bet. Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm back, Mom. I know how we go from one subject to another, but uh, I just got off the phone with my sister last night. My brothers and sisters consist of two boys, two girls. I've got an older brother, older sister, me, and my youngest sister. Boy, girl, boy, girl. And I just got off the phone with my eldest sister last night, and she loves to talk, of course. And um, we were talking about pretty much catching up on stuff. She's in California, and I'm here in New Jersey. And I just got a belated birthday card that apparently was sent back because they couldn't read her handwriting. True story. It's on the envelope. It says, anyways, so they sent it back to her and she rewrote it in printing. And then it finally got to me the other day. And so I called her to thank her and she sent some photos along with it. So on back to what we were talking about. So in our conversation, she starts telling me about my youngest sister, and we kind of lost touch, and really no reason. It's just life events, separated us. I'm on the East Coast. My youngest sister's in Oregon. So I'm asking my older sister, about Sherry. That's my youngest sister, and she started telling me basically like another chapter that I never knew had been going on for the last couple of years, and then some. And I'm like, I was kind of getting emotional listening to it. I was like, oh my gosh, that happened to Sherry? And my sister's talking like, everything, everybody knows about this. And I'm like, I had no idea. And I said, what's her number? And she's like, oh, please, Gary, don't tell her I told you or whatever. I said, no, I just want to call and love on her. It sounds like she's hurting really bad right now, both physically and emotionally. And I went, gosh, that's my sister. I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about it. And she said, oh, no problem. I'll text you her number. And I never got the text. I was like, Jody's my eldest sister. Jody, you just said you were going to text me her number. And she never sent it. So I got to figure out what Sherry's number is and try to get a hold of her. No, she's not. She's living in a mobile home, a motor home by herself with her 4 dogs, apparently. And her husband they're both separated. And I never knew this. I thought she was living happily ever after in her second marriage to a retired police officer, who's financially set and taking care of her and bought a beautiful home or some riverfront home in Oregon. And I saw those pictures. I was like, wow, cool. You know, good for Sherry. And then come to find out there's been a dark side going on for however many years. Um, I know. Well, just to add insult to injury, she's in the she's in the kind of the peripheral medical field herself, not uh, formal medical education, but she got into uh, the disabled and special needs, not only children or people, but adults. She's worked with blind as well as mentally uh, challenged adults. And that's kind of been her job for a number of years in one capacity or another. And apparently, my sister's telling me she was transporting a man in the back seat. I don't know if it was a company vehicle or her own vehicle. And he assaulted her physically, fists and everything, while she was driving. And I'm hearing this going like, Sherry, my sister, our sister. I'm talking to my eldest, and she's like, oh yeah, it broke her hand and it put a chip in her one of her cervical vertebrae, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm not in the social media realm. I separated myself from that for obvious reasons, and and we just kind of lost touch with each other. So, I got phone calls and or messages every now and then about my brothers and sisters, and I'm hearing this about my sister Sherry, and I thought, oh my gosh, where is she? And apparently she's uh, going through that process, unfortunately. And instead of living at the house, he took she took the motorhome and is living in a motorhome park and is safe and apparently, got food and money and as far as her kids, they're grown now, thank God. She's younger. She's 3 years younger than me, so she's 59. She'll be 59 actually in November, and she's got a daughter, a son, and a youngest. She's got three, and they're all grown, and she's a grandma. Um, the two girls have children. The middle boy, he's not a daddy yet, and they're all within the mid 20s to younger 20s or gosh, I don't even know how old Lashana is. That's her oldest girl. Yeah, so yeah, I got to get a hold of my sister and just tell her I'm here. If worse comes to worse, I've got an extra room in my house. I'm on the East Coast, but yeah. Yeah, I was saddened. And this is just again unfortunate, but it's like the first time I felt that for my sister or for any of my brothers and sisters because they've all been okay, relatively speaking. We all have our strongholds, and our downfalls, but um, I was like, man, that was kind of hurtful because I've I've kind of been there alone, you know, separated, divorced, in tears next to the Mississippi River in New Orleans, Louisiana, with my all my identification stolen, nothing but my keys to my car and no gas in it, and I guess that's where it kind of brought me back to. But can you imagine though, like yourself, can you imagine having three kids, which you can, or if this would have happened when the kids were younger, and at home on your own? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you kind of alluded to a little bit of what you were going through um, when I was talking about, uh, how the government's affecting our lifestyle and our finances and so on. So sorry if I didn't know the story, and you were one of you're. It sounds like you're the exception, where you're being directly affected by what the government is providing those that are struggling like yourself. Well, pray for my sister. Her name's Sherry. Sherri. I mean, literally by name. You can, you know, cry out to God to take care of Sherry in Oregon. Yeah. Yeah, pretty it's like now for the first time, like I said earlier, for the first time in my life, I kind of, I'm sharing Gosh, my throat's like getting so plugged up. Hold on a second. I think it's the coffee and the creamer that's laying a big thick layer in the back of my throat. Um, I'm sharing the same emotions, that I've had before. And like, yeah, I, kind of been there. Maybe not to the extent she's been through. And it sound, and then my sister drops the bomb about her being assaulted at work. And I thought, what? How come, how come my brother and my mom and nobody's told me any of this? I didn't know about this. And maybe nobody else knew either. Maybe my sister's the only one that knows. I don't know. But yeah, well, a little bit. I'm a guy, she's a girl, and we are different, animals, human beings. And there's more. She shared some more with me that was, I don't know. It fits, you know, her inability, and apparently she's actually being treated for PTSD because of this assault that she experienced. And that was like, well, I have um, my own thought on, PTSD, but then again, what do I know? It kind of, if I would elaborate any on that, it reminds me of, and I'm again probably wrong. It reminds me of when ADHD, ADD, attention deficit disorder, emerged into the medical scene, and every kid was being diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, and they're being put on Ritalin and all these drugs to control their hyperactivity and yada yada yada. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go, and how out of control that went. And that was kind of went by the wayside and has now settled down a bit. And now they got PTSD. Not that that isn't real, but they're they're now using it, to and fitting a broader range of emotional and physical trauma, affecting the brain, and inserting that into, that PTSD category, which is actually, might be a good thing. We'll see. Time will tell. Where maybe, before they didn't have a category to fit those types of insults, whether emotional or physical or both, into. And now they have a category to put it into, and they call it PTSD. And there is a specific treatment and uh, goal, you know, in mind when treating that. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I understand. And again, this is just without any research. When ADHD or ADD, came into the picture, what I was seeing it was typical children behavior with lack of direction. Again, I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's what I was seeing. It was, it wasn't so much the children's problem. It was the environment they were being brought up in, and or unchecked behavior, with now all the uh, things that society has now frowned upon. You can't strike your child. It's called abuse. You can't do this. You can't do that. Where people, I came out just fine with, with a strong hand on my butt and or a ruler or other objects. Yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot more than I even have heard of today. Ah, Josh, you're back. We were talking about you, brother. Let me fill you in without having to scroll back, but we were just talking about initially the hazardous duty pay that military gets, when they're deployed, and how that increased the paycheck, and what how much did it increase your paycheck? Um, Batmom, ex-husband, was deployed, and she remembers the uh, the hazardous duty pay, increasing the paycheck. Well, let me tell you a story here, Batmom. On that note, oh, Magnus, you're there. Oh, you are still listening. Well, thanks for hanging out, brother. Um, Let me tell you a little story about this. True story. Oh my gosh, we're gonna go from medicine to from medicine to military to to child abuse. I've got an indirect, direct story about that. Exactly about this, about your children threatening to call CPS on me and so on, and tell them, please do. They think I'm taking whole phone away as abuse. Exactly. Well, let me share a story. It's funny now that it's already happened. Makes a good campfire story, but at the time I was like, "Are you kidding me? Is this really happening?" My eldest boy, I think I made a reference to him last time. He'll be 40 this November. He's a Thanksgiving baby, November 22nd, 1984. Um, he was 19. Was he 19 at the time? Let's see. Wait. I was deployed to Iraq. Um, Was this before Iraq? Yes, it was. Okay. I think it was 17, 17, 18, somewhere between 17 and 19. When I got deployed in 2004, he was 20. He was just to be before he was 20 years old. So it was somewhere between 17 and 20 when I took a vacation with him. And it was a father son outing. Ah, yeah, I think you told me. Remember we were talking about you being just a bit younger than he is. Yeah. Yeah, you're right along that same a year younger, a year and a month younger than he is. Um, so I decided to go on to make a loop and go on vacation with him. And we started in San Diego. Let's see, were we in San Diego at the time? Uh, no, we were living in Bakersfield, California. The Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley of California. He was living with us, and I say us, meaning my wife now. Um, he was going through some issues with his stepdad, and wanted to get the heck out of there and come live with me. And I accepted him in a heartbeat. So he was living with us, and we decided to go on vacation. And it was just dad and son. And we started in Bakersfield. We went to Arizona, um, visited the Grand Canyon, went through the Grand Canyon, into Utah, and then eventually did the loop through St. George and down into Nevada, and did Las Vegas, and then eventually back to California. Well, during that loop, we're kind of roughing it slash staying in a hotel room every now and then, or with my dad in Arizona when we first started. And we're on the other side of the Grand Canyon, and we went through Grand Canyon. It was kind of a mistake on my part as far as logistics. We got started too late and ended up looking for a hotel room at 11 o'clock at night, and a lot of them are closed, and so we ended up camping out in the car or on the side of the road in our sleeping bag and our sleeping pad. And then we head into Utah the next day, and we get a hotel room, and we went out to dinner, whatever, and spent the day. And then, how come that light seems to be like really dim? Hold on a sec. And then we're waking up the next morning. To continue. This is in St. George, Utah, and I woke up early, like 6 in the morning, and I'm packing the suitcases, the one suitcase we were using, and he's still in bed. So I remember waking him up, and his name's Jason. Jason, get up. We're going to head out early. We're going to go get some breakfast. And he's like, okay. So he gets up and he hops in the shower. And I take the suitcase out to the car, out in the parking lot. It's still dark. And then when I came back, I was doing something, and I popped my head into the bathroom to ask him a question or whatever. I don't remember exactly the exchange. And he kind of gave me an attitude, and as a dad, you're like, what? Like, what did you say? I went, popped my head back in there, like, what did you say? And he said it again, and he opened the shower curtain, and he looked at me. He like locked eyeballs with me, and it was like that confrontational look. And I thought, really? What? And he wasn't like backing off with his eyes. And I thought, what do you mean? And then it was that confrontation started. And he like, was like he was ready to physically confront me while he's in the shower. I think maybe he got out and had his towel around him, because what happened next made me think that he was already out of the shower. And I realized, I can't let this progress any further. And I pushed him to get him away from me. And he fell into the shower, and his legs went up in the air, and the whole shower curtain went down. A big clunk, 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 the shower curtain comes slamming down on top of him. Yeah, it's exactly. I was like, no, you're not gonna get there, Jason. No, we're not having this. And so I pushed him away from me. Everything came down, literally. And he's, of course, trying to scramble up and get out of the mess. And I just sat there and made sure he was okay, and he was fine. And I continued out into the parking lot with the suitcase. And I put the suitcase into the car, I remember. And I came back into the room, and Jason he wasn't in the bathroom anymore. So I went into the room, into the hotel room where the bed was, and there he is on the phone. And he looks at me with that guilty, uh-oh, and he hangs up the phone. And I went, who were you talking to? And he all of a sudden got zipper shut. Yeah. Yeah. And he he's kind of sitting back and sitting up. And I said, who were you talking to? And he all of a sudden just got, closed-lipped, and he wouldn't answer me. And I realized, did you just call 911? And he just wouldn't say anything. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. 5 minutes. Knock, knock, knock on the door. It was the sheriff. Utah Sheriff Department. Two officers. No, 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 no. No, his stepdad was the reason why he came to live with me. He was about to physically assault his stepdad, and I had to tell him, no, 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 put the hatchet down. Literally, that's what he was telling me. And I was like, no, so no, he wasn't calling his stepdad. So, anyways, he calls 911 on me in Utah, St. George, Utah. I ended up in handcuffs on vacation in St. George, Utah, and took down to the station and was being processed for assault of my own son. And I got the phone call, and the phone call I got to make, my phone call, was I needed to come up with a $900 10% bond. The bond, the amount was $9,000, but 10% of that's 900. And I had to figure out, where am I going to come up with $900? We didn't have it. We didn't have it in our account, my wife and I. And so I called my mom in California, and she was able to put it on her credit card, and I posted bail and was able to get out of jail. And I go back to, and my son was in the sheriff's department waiting room because I was his ride anywhere. So they had to keep him with me. And so he's in the waiting room, come to find out after the fact. And after I post bail and got out, and we got in the car and went back to the hotel room, I had to make another day's reservation, another night's reservation, because Utah had this special program for people like us that got in trouble in their state, and they gave you an attorney, a prosecutor, a defense attorney representation, and a court hearing the very next day. And I had to go down to the courtroom with my son and appear in front of a judge. And he basically, my sentence was, you're not to appear. Oh, I know. Just listen, Bat Mom. Listen, listen. It gets better. Believe you me. Oh, I know. I know, you guys. Listen. So he's sitting behind me in the courtroom. And here the attorney is sitting next to me, and the judge is up there in front, and he was kind of an older man. And he sentenced me to, you're not to appear in my state for 1 year. Okay. And he didn't fine me anymore because I already paid $900. And what was it? Oh, and a restraining order to not be around my son for however long, 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it was. And I was like, cha-ching, guess where you're staying, Jordan? I mean, Jason, looks like you're going to get a ride home from Utah. Right? That's what I thought. I thought, well, that's perfect, but then I thought about it, and I went, you know what? I told my attorney, I'm my son's ride. We're on vacation. We're yet to get back to California. We're like right in the middle of our vacation. I said, he ain't going anywhere without me. And he's like, okay, I understand. Hold on. Let me talk to the judge. And so he tells the judge, and the judge is like, oh, well, that's easy. And he's like, let me speak to your son for a moment. And we both leaned to the side so he could speak through us. And he addressed my son directly. And he said, so apparently your dad is your ride home. He said, so do you want to get home? He's like, he said, well, then I'll lift that restraining order, but you're going to have to be with your dad, for the rest of your vacation. You think you can do that? And I'm looking at him going, You better say yes, or you're on your own here in Utah. So he's like, yes, sir. And I think I even said to him, good answer. so and so the judge is like, that's fine, and he threw that part of the sentencing away, the restraining order. Game, Parker. Yeah. So anyhow, uh, so the situation, the sentence was, don't come to my state for a year, and if I catch you back in my state, and whatever. And I said, Roger that. And so we left. We actually went and got, I think we went and got some breakfast. And then afterwards, or maybe we didn't, we just got on the road. And while we were on the highway leaving St. George, Utah, and we're just like quiet, there's nothing being said. He's sitting there and I'm sitting here. And I eventually turned the radio down and I looked over at him. I said, what in the world were you thinking? And he says, remember when you called the police on me for stealing that watch in Tehachapi, California? And I'm like, yeah. He said, basically, I'm getting back at you. And I thought, what? So that was his repercussions to me for sending him to juvenile hall for being a thief from Kmart. When he first arrived from Florida, remember when he left his mom and stepdad from Florida and he decided to steal something from Kmart, and I caught him with it. And I decided to set an example by scaring him, by calling the police on him. Speaking of sheriff, it was the sheriff in town, and they came and put him in handcuffs and took him down to juvenile hall and spent the night. And I picked him up the next morning. So that was his payback. He called the police on me. God. Like, what the? So yeah, on that note of your kids calling the authorities, I couldn't believe it. I put two and two together real quick. He's on the phone. I just pushed him in the shower and embarrassed the heck out of him. Oh my gosh. He was what, 18? 18 or 19? And shortly thereafter in history, I got the phone call to be deployed to Iraq. And then he's going to stay in California apparently and make ends meet while his dad's over in Iraq. And I pleaded with him to stay with my wife, his stepmom, and go back to New Jersey with her so she could provide a roof over his head and employ him. He was going to be a driver here in New Jersey and just take people to and from places and work. And believe you me, my wife and her family, her sisters that live right here in New Jersey nearby, they're full of money. And they would have employed him. He would have been treated like a king as far as finances and taken care of. But apparently he found a girl in California, and that was the reason why he wanted to stay in California, unbeknownst to me. And he didn't share with me that he actually had found a girl, Dad, and that's why he wanted to stay in California. And he's been on his own ever since, and he's 40 years old now, and he's fended for himself ever since he was 19 and I went to Iraq. Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm one of those guys. My kids wouldn't even think about trying me. My wife said, you're one scary dude. Just saying. I know. Well, you know what? He was going through that stage, that puberty / growing up. I'll stand up to him to this day, and he knows that. I actually spoke to him here in the recent past, and it unfortunately wasn't kind of on a good note. It was unfortunate, but I haven't told him this, but I've told my wife this. He needs to be married and become a daddy. That's what's going to make him grow up. He's still, and I actually said, I called him a punk kid the last phone call I had with him. And he really is. He's a 40-year-old punk kid still that doesn't know anything more than what he has decided to take upon himself in life. And that's the only way. And that's not being harmful to it's like every person that doesn't know what it's like to be a daddy, they just don't know. It really does change you. And he hasn't changed. At least I don't know him as an adult, but just by when he talks to me, and and then again, who am I? I've got my own downfalls, and he could say the same thing about me. So yeah, yeah, I know. So yeah, there's nothing more there. There comes a point where, as you guys are finding out, if you haven't already, that there comes a point when they're grown and on their own now, and all I can do is pray for them, and whatever it is that's holding them back, whatever feelings they have still towards their mom and dad, I can't do anything about that now. You're 40 years old. What more can I do? So yeah, I know it does. It's hard. Oh, on that note of when after that vacation and then getting deployed to Iraq, um, here's when the truth comes out in how they really feel, and really what's the battle that they're going through is, they're just looking for love and protection, and maybe not wanting to do it on their own yet, but yet at the same time they'll resist and rebel, like, who are you to tell me what to do? I can do it on my own. But so I get the phone call to go to Iraq, and he's living with my wife still in Bakersfield, California, and I'm going through the motions at 29 Palms, to get deployed. And I've got one weekend to, or a couple weekends, 2 weekends still before I head out to Kuwait. And so it's their time to come visit me. And the very last weekend, he comes to 29 Palms with my wife, basically say goodbye. And, we go to lunch together at the galley, and so on and so forth. And then eventually, there come that time when I gotta, say goodbye, and they're on the base, and hugs and kisses, and my son, and then on the way home, I don't know, what goes on that trip back home. It's like a 2-3 hour drive back to Bakersfield. Maybe it's 4. And then my wife tells me, I don't know if it was over in Iraq via phone call or what, but I remember her telling me, um, Jason broke down and cried on the way home. Gosh, I'm how emotional that is just saying it. But I was like, yeah, imagine that, 19 or not. Yeah, it was and then of course, here, fast forward. And then of course, a year later or thereabouts, when I get home, and then we reunite, of course, everybody's in tears, Jason and his girlfriend meeting me there with her, and my mom and my brother, and so on. They all came together to see Dad get off the bus back at 29 Palms. And of course, the tears were flowing. Yeah. My eldest son works, has his own apartment, and still asks me for gas money. It's the dad thing. You're always their dad. I know. Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's something going on between you know, I have a picture back here on the wall in the hallway. The family pictures and so on, including my 1980s picture that I already showed you. Yeah, next to them, um, of my my youngest. I think I told you. I don't know if I mentioned Bat Mom. I'm remarried and I had one more child, my youngest. So I've got two older children and my youngest boy. And Jason, my eldest, came a few times to visit once my youngest was born. And I have a picture of my oldest boy. I think he was, I don't know. I don't know how old he was, 20 or something, when he came to visit me. And my youngest was 4, 3 or 4. And there's a picture of them right back on my wall of them together. My eldest playing a video game, one of the PlayStation mobile, video games, and my youngest laying on his shoulder, overlooking him while he's playing a video game. And they got along, like two peas in a pod. It was the coolest thing. As a dad, you're like, your heart's just going like this, heartstrings, or, that everything's okay, between the two brothers. Even though he's old enough, the eldest is old enough to be his brother's dad. And literally, that's how old I was when I had my eldest. I was 22 years old. And so, I remember that, things seemed to be cool between, my eldest and his youngest brother. And yeah, I know it was, you're just like, as a mom and a dad, you can't ask for anything more than to see, the siblings, getting together. Or I remember my daughter, my eldest son's younger sister, they're 4 years apart. When they were growing up, I remember with my first wife, observing us two in the kitchen, watching the brother and sister on the couch watching TV, and my daughter is just like laying on in his brother's, in her brother's lap, and they're both just reclined back like this, laying with each other on the couch, just like natural love for each other, and those types of memories are like, oh, your heart's just going like this. And I remember tapping on my wife's shoulder, like, look, and you get to see something that only you can experience as mom and dad of children. That's the type of growing, the maturity that my eldest still hasn't experienced, and he claims he never will. He won't go through what I went through, or whatever his reasoning is. But anyways, today, the last conversation I had with him was something totally contrary to what I'm expressing right now. Those memories, that photo that I have in the hallway. Um, Only thing that kind of worries me is, Doc, I have 4 kids, the eldest being 19, youngest being 7. I got the fifth one on the way. Hopefully I still have it, like mobility and stuff. Um, well, you gotta, I guess maybe the first thing, yeah, that's exactly what I'm about to say, Bat Mom, is you gotta figure out what's causing this. I always ask, you do understand what's causing this, right, Josh? You need to cut it, bro. That's advice number one. You need to do something. Well, I did the same thing when I was 40. How old was I when I became a daddy the last time? I was 45. I was your age, Josh. Let's see, 2005. I was 43. I was 43 when I had my last one. And now I'm 62 and I have a 19-year-old. But you have a 19-year-old, yeah, at 45. Oh my gosh, and you got a fifth one coming on the way. Yeah, you get to the snipped, homie, or something. Or her tube's tied or something. Magnus, I've always been hit and run with women. Oh, I thought Magnus, I was gonna read. No, wait a minute. You mean you got kids out there that you never knew it? Are you sure? Are you sure, Magnus? Are you sure about that? Not getting snip and all that. F that. Well, then have her get her tubes tied. I mean, they put a little rubber ring around the tube. That's what um before, and they do it after the pregnancy. You might consider that. They can do it at the delivery and get it all done in one, all at the same time, if she's up for that. There's no cutting or snipping. They put a little rubber band. They put a kink in the tube and they put a rubber band around it, to my knowledge. Something like that. Yeah, you don't have to go through all that. We discussed that. We discussed those options. Either me or her, and then we found out what it entailed and that they could do it after the pregnancy, after the delivery, at the same time. Let them do it. Is she? Yeah. I don't know if she's going to have a C-section or naturally or whatever, but so anyways, that's an option you guys can talk about. uh, what? Oh crap! My 10-year-old is yelling at my dad. Oh no. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Oh my gosh. Uh, I'm good, but damn. Yeah. So, anyways, back to my son. The conversation we had, I didn't expect it. Honestly, I didn't even see it coming. But through, I don't know, the last however many years it's been, 5 years maybe. There's kind of been I've been noticing, uh, like what do you want to call it? Like a wall, I guess, or some kind of a barrier starting to form between my eldest and not between them two. They don't even know each other. You know, Jor- Jordan back here. I'm pointing as if he's back there. That's right. He went to go pick up my wife. Um, doesn't even know, his brother since he's been a teenager. And when I spoke to my son the last time, I mean, imagine this. How many times here? Let me ask you, Josh, how many times have you done the roll call with your kids? Meaning calling them the wrong name, or you go through, my dad called it the roll call, you know, Lanny, I mean, Jody, Gary, no, I mean, Sherry, right? Well, I do that. I mean, especially my son's names both start with J, Jordan and Jason, right? So I'm speaking to my son, Jason, the eldest, the 40-year-old or near 40-year-old, and I called him, yeah, daily. I know. So I mean, what's the big deal, right? Well, I did that with Jason and I called him Jordan and he jumped down my throat and said, "Dad, I take offense to that." And I'm like, "What? It's, it's your brother." And that's when I realized where he's coming from and his where his mindset may be that's causing him to be this way. And I realized, whoa. And that's when I thought, you know what? I said, and all due respect, I mean, I said, you're still a punk kid. And he started, his defense, and I just said, you're still a punk kid. I was waiting for him to say, well, you're an effing, whatever, but he didn't. And praise God, he didn't. He didn't like treat me like he didn't know me. I just said, you're still a punk kid, Jason. Yeah, but abandon him. Where did I abandon him? When? The last emotional hug and tears we shared was Dad coming home from war. Praise God for me coming home. And now what it doesn't, yeah, I've already ran these scenarios through my head, Mom, and it doesn't make sense. It's like, wait a minute, he's a grown man. He's a grown man, for God's sakes. Abandoning him? To whom? Where? When? What did abandoning him? What are you talking about? I mean, that's what I would express back to him. What are you talking about? If he said that, I was like, what? Abandoning him? And I know he won't get it. That's exactly what thank you. But see, the resentment part doesn't really make sense either, Mom. I've I've run these scenarios through my head and it just doesn't make sense because I've visited him. I've traveled across the United States. I've told you, I think I've mentioned 5 times by car. Moving the cars twice, 2 cars twice from San Diego to New Jersey. We did it twice. So that's 4 times, And then there was one time I did it on my own visiting my family. But anyways, um, in during those trips, few times, I either stop on the way over and visit him in Wichita, Kansas, and or on the way back. And I stay a night or two with him in Wichita. And you know what? No matter how old that boy is, I kneel down on my knees and put my face against his face. It's true, and love on him like he's a little boy. And he was what? The last time I did that, he was, I don't know, in his 30s. And you can tell you're that, that dad son relationship, never leaves. And so with those memories, for him to have said that, just doesn't make sense. It's like, wait a minute, Jason, I've never left you. But there's something going on deeper than what I know. And I don't know what it is. And I can't I can't do anything else other than what I've thought I've been doing. There's something else going on that he's struggling with and he's searching for and he's not finding. And knowing what I know now, you know, I know what's gonna help him, and he's chosen not to go down that road. And all I can do is pray for him and ask other people to, to do the same. And prayer works. I don't care how much people don't want to believe that, but um, yeah, but you say they though. It's like, when do they become us? And I'm thinking he's past that. He's 40 years old, for God's sakes. He's your age. And I probably shouldn't have said it, but I did. That was the last thing I said with him before he hung up. I said, "You're still a punk kid. You can think and blame." He's still shifting the blame. I think one of the things he last said to me was, "Thanks for ruining my life, Dad." And I went, "Really?" That's a punk kid statement to me. Thanks for ruining my life. At 40? What? When do you accept the blame? Guys, that's reform is unanimous written all over it. He needs to find a program near him and start attending. Have his life change forever. That's a good thing, by the way. I don't remember the bad things. Then again, my wife always says, "Well, don't compare." It's like, well, you know, I don't remember the bad things. I've never held grudges. Never. If you want to bring them up, I could recall, some of these instances, but then again, what was so bad that I am going to blame my mom and dad for the person I am today? No. Way past that. I think I was 35 when I cried out to my mom and told her, thank you so much for being my mom and my dad. They did the best they could, and now that was when I became a daddy, and I realized that there was nothing else that they were going to be able to do for me, and that everything was on me, and that I was starting to experience what they had already experienced, and now I'm going through it. Yeah, I guess we're going back to realizing what each other. I mean, realizing what being a mom and a dad does for a person. So, okay, Josh. Yeah, so yeah, it's past the. I think I think you can agree. The point of kids only remember the bad, things, and yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, mom. That's exactly. Yeah, I guess maybe that's a good point. Maybe there won't be a time in his life when he gets to experience, becoming a mom or a dad. And because of that, therefore, um, just keep treating him like a son that never had the opportunity to become, a daddy, and realize that he's not going to be there. He's not going to get to experience that and fill that part of that in with just being his dad, being there for him. That's a good point.
So you should have went to your car, get a bag, and went back and get some more vegetables.
Yeah, wait till they get older.
Where's my straw?
Mom, it gets even better. Yep. Wait till you become a grandparent. Huh.
Still waiting for mine.
Speaking of a side of you that you only hear about, but um, maybe you are a grandmother already. I forgot. Until no, they until they become a parent. Yeah. And that Joey still at a red light. Thought I would say hi. Joey, what's going on, brother? Oh, you do. Well, you became a grandma. Yeah, the tables start to kind of turn when you become a. I think your kids start to get a different perspective. When well, at least I did when I became a parent. Or yeah, that's true. I guess you're right. Um, yeah, you don't really have that same feeling of love for your mom and your dad like you do your children. It's different, right? Yeah. Like even to this day, when I speak to my mom, I'm using an example. When I speak to my mom, there still is that mother son kind of contention. Mom's like, "Oh, I know you get it, Gary, better than you think you do," and I'm like, "Mom, I'm 62 years old. Come on." It's like, "Do you? I think you lost touch with who I am from that perspective. You've lost you've lost touch with your son, whether you want to admit it or not." Again, Joey, that just came in. He's ex-army, a dad of how many kids? Joey, 3, 4. So yeah, we went from what was I doing? I was telling about my military, how I got initiated into the military, and then um, yeah, and then that went to being a dad. Oh, and family, and so on. Whereabouts are you, Joey? Yeah, yeah, that's I agree. Yeah, your kids are. You don't. I don't put my face against my mother's face like I do my son. He's 19 and I still, wrap my arms around him when he's sitting at his computer and put my head right there at the crick of his neck, and smell on him, you know, and rub his back. That type of behavior is what I was referring to that I still do with my eldest son. I remember before I departed, and the last time I stayed with him, and he was in bed, he gave me the bed in his room. He had a roommate at the time. His roommate was gone, and so he gave me his roommate's bed to sleep in. And I left early in the morning at like 6:30 in the morning to get on the road to continue driving to San Diego from Wichita. And I remember, he was under his covers, and I knelt down beside him and did this very same thing. Put my head down between his neck and just sat there and, felt the warmth. And gave him a kiss before I left. Yeah, it doesn't matter how old they are. Yeah, that's true. And I'm sure, I'm going to take an educated guess that that's what my son is seeking, but he really doesn't know. Yeah, that's what's missing. This program that I mentioned before, the Reform is Unanimous program, it can help you in so many ways. It's not just for people that are suffering from strongholds, or addictions. It addresses so much more, so much more. It addresses exactly what we're talking about. It talks about accepting the blame. It talks about you know who 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 it's ultimately about. And the answer is it's not about you. It addresses all of it. It addresses the root of of who you are and where you came from. Who gets the credit? And it's not you. It's not be all you can be in the army. No matter what society tells you and feeds you, it's not about you. That's the problem. You are the problem. And when you discover that and learn an alternate way, an alternate uh, credit, who gets the credit, that's when you start. That's when you start. Your mind and your life starts to change. It's not about you. How do you how do you know how to love when you don't know who love is? Love is not a thing. It's a person. See, you ultimately, even as a parent, you might know what love is for a child, but do you really truly know what love is? I didn't. I didn't even know how to answer that question until you learn an alternate way of thinking, and then it starts changing who you are and how you act, things you listen to, things you say, places you go. It's true. Love is a person. 1 John 4:8. God is love. If you want to truly know how to love, get to know God. Get to know him. Study him. Start. And I'm told you this before. The best way I can suggest to do that is find out where there's a chapter near you. Reform is Unanimous program. It's it's incredible. It's ultimate. Just it rocked my world to change just 180 degrees what I thought I knew. Crazy. Yeah, the ultimate love is the sacrificial. Here's the Reformers Unanimous verbatim definition of love based on God's word. Love is the willing sacrificial giving of oneself for the benefit of another with no thought of return. The dissecting, defining, you've heard me use that expression before. Dissecting and defining that is the willing sacrificial giving of oneself. It's going to hurt for the benefit of another. It's not about you with no thought of return. You're not expecting anything in return for suffering for somebody else. An example of that, I don't know if it was Art Linkletter or one of those old school shows where he's interviewing, an adult is interviewing a child, and he says to the little girl, "What is love?" As he holds the microphone to her mouth, and she says, she's raising her hand, and he says, "What's love?" And she says, "Love is when my grandfather paints my grandmother's toenails because she can't do it anymore." And the adult was like blown away. Wow. But it's even more than that. Can you imagine sacrificing your life for? For is in the place of. When you drop your keys and somebody picks them up for you, they're doing it so that you don't have to. If you didn't bend over and pick up those keys for that person, they would have had to have done it themselves. So when you look at what Christ did for us, he sacrificed his life and suffered all the pain and suffering that anybody, past, present, and future, could go through, mentally and physically. And then he did the impossible. He resurrected from his grave. Why? So that you don't have to go through that. You see, that's what for God so loved the world. He did it for us. He did it in place of us. Because if he wouldn't have done it, we would have had to have done it ourselves. And there's no way we could have done it. It's like, OMG. That is true love. You might be able to take a bullet for your son, but can you resurrect from your grave for him so that he doesn't have to? Which he's not going to be able to do? Resurrect from his grave? Why do you want to resurrect from your grave? So you have another opportunity to do this again forever this time, though? With no end? No pain, no suffering? Don't ask me what that's going to be like. But isn't that something? The love for a child is called filial love. It's where the word Philadelphia comes from. But phileo love. Is that phileo love? Correct me. God's love is agape love. AGAPE. That's where filial love comes from. That love that we express for our children or our family, that love, that bond, that's just part of it. That's crazy. It's like, wow. So, Yeah, that program, the Reforms Unanimous program, just walks you through it. Start at page 1, and when you're done, go to page 2. And next thing you know, you're head deep in scripture and you're studying it and doing assignments and memorizing it. And it's class. It's what it is. It's school for 6 to 9 months. And when you're done, yeah, yeah, my mom went through this with my grandma. Yeah. I didn't get to see that, thank God. But then again, I worked with dementia patients and saw it. But to experience it with your own loved one, yeah, my mom got to see the deterioration of my grandmother. Yeah, pretty scary. Hey, speaking of a medical note, hey, I've got something to share with you guys. I just found out yesterday, got the referral actually for it. In the event I need to make uh, make use of it, is I was where was I? I was in the backyard, um, just doing whatever I was doing back there, and I like got a flash, like a blip, little lightning bolt or blip of light over here. No, agape is no. That's God's love. Phileo love is your for your brothers and sisters. Um, the Yeah, I was in the backyard and I got a little flash of light in my periphery, and I turned to see what it was, and I didn't see it again. But then shortly again, it like appeared again, and now I'm looking up kind of in my contacts. I'm wearing contacts right now, and I figure maybe it's the sun, reflecting off my contacts. But I've never experienced that before with my contacts, so it was new, and I'm like, what's that? So now I stopped and I'm starting to look around and I'm reproducing it just by moving my eyes. And I thought, uh-oh, what's I can move my eyeballs up and down. And when I go up and down, I see a little flash along the base of my eyeball. And when I move my eyes side to side, I see a flash of light on the going vertical up and down on the right side of my eyeball. And I thought, ooh, I've read about that and I hear it about it every time I go to the eye for an eye doctor appointment. It's a symptoms of a detached retina. And I thought, no, not me. You know, usually that occurs after head trauma. I haven't had that since 1982, 44 years ago, or what, 42 years ago. But I did have some residual signs afterwards. It's called floaters. The jelly-like fluid, which is the gosh, I'm talking it, and it makes me forget when I talk about it. Um, what is the jelly fluid again in your eyeball, honey? Hello? She must have her earplugs in. Anyways, the vitreous humor, um, is the inside jelly-like fluid that fills the inside of your eyeball. That can get Yeah, that can get detached or interrupted, like Jello. And if you shake Jello enough, it'll put a fracture in it or a little piece that is now separate from the main body. And they call those floaters. And those, there's really nothing you can do about them. Gravity kind of makes them float up and over and sometimes in your vision, but they'll subside and they won't be in your vision unless you move quickly or you look at a bright wall and you might see a little hair like object kind of floating down in your vision that kind of disappears out of sight. Or it might be a little star, whatever the shape is. They vary. Anyways, I had some of those after my motor vehicle accident I told you about back in the 80s. But now this is, I haven't had anything else since then. And so I'm seeing this little flash of light, and it's literally like a lightning bolt. Did it, or did it along the bottom. And so I thought, okay, let's troubleshoot this one step further. Let me go in and take my contacts out and see if it's still there. And sure enough, I took my contacts out and I'm moving my eyes back and forth and up and down, and I can recreate it. And I thought, oh, crap. Well, time to make an appointment and, see what that's about. So I just went in yesterday and they dilated my eyes and she examined me. And she said, well, good news is your retina looks fine. There's no tear in it, but she diagnosed this as a vitreous detachment, which is the jelly-like fluid. And she asked me, are you having any more floaters? And I said, I've got the prescription here in my hand. It's a posterior vitreous detachment. And I haven't heard this before, but I'd have to, bring up a diagram of the eyeball again. I was always intrigued about the eyeball. The eyeball and the heart are really cool pieces of anatomy, parts of the anatomy that are just wild, at least for me. And so I guess the vitreous is attached to the side walls of your, the inside of your eyeball as well. And it can be pulled away from the external attachments of your eyeball. So I'm thinking of it as like a hole and a bunch of jelly inside the hole. If it gets pulled away from the attachment, i.e. the retina, it can either tear your retina or it can just pull at the retina and make it flex. And if there's any movement of your retina or tearing, it will cause flashes of light. So in my case, it's not torn, but there's some jelly that apparently has detached, some new jelly. And I do have a new kind of floater that then when she mentioned it, I was out in the waiting room while I was waiting for her to call me back. And I'm looking at the wall. As a matter of fact, I'm doing it right now. And I see this little spider floater in my vision right now as I'm talking. It's right here on the right side. And if I move my eyes forward, it's kind of up off center. And then eventually it'll kind of float its way downwards. But anyways, that being said, it kind of fits what she was telling me. You had a new detachment of vitreous, and that's tugging, or because of that, it's causing some pulling on your retina. And when it does that, you're seeing flashes of light. So I said, so what's the treatment for that? And she's like, nothing. Time. If it gets worse, here's the referral I'm going to give you with the diagnosis. And if it gets worse, then you can go into an ophthalmologist. That's an eye surgeon, and then he can address it from there. Oh, there goes my battery to my camera. And then I already kind of did a little bit of Google research as far as, what do they do for retinal detachments? And I didn't come up with the treatment that she mentioned, which is even less invasive than what I was reading. And that is they cauterize, or actually they use a laser, and they just zap the tear, and then that heals, and a little scar tissue remains, and your vision isn't affected. It's just taking care of the detachment, the tear, and it heals on itself. It heals by itself. So it was good news that it wasn't anything worse than. Let me see if I can focus this. Hold on a second. There it is. I think that did it. And I can center myself. Aha. With my hat kind of disappearing. There. I guess the more I zoom in, the blurrier it gets. Is that okay? Yeah. So yeah, I'm falling apart. Right eye floaters. She mentioned here. Left eye. That's what around. Let's see. OD is right eye. OS is left eye. I always remember is dexterous. D is dexterous, and typically the majority of the population are right-handed people, and so I always associate that with being dexterous. No offense to left-handed people. My son's left-handed actually, but that's how I remember the abbreviations. OD. Dexterous means right-handed to me because I'm dexterous and I'm right-handed. Maybe that's why. And then the other OS is left eye. Gosh, I'm blurry again. Retina follow up with retina if worsens. Yeah. So I left the eye doc with my eyeballs blown this big, and I could barely. Well, actually, it wasn't too bad when I left the doctor's office. I was actually able to drive home with my sunglasses on. And then when I got home and pulled into the driveway and I opened the door, holy moly, I could barely open my eyeballs. It was that bright. So I put my sunglasses on as I walked up to the house. Thought, whoa, that's pretty acute. Definitely wasn't cute, but it was acute. Acutely bright. Gosh, I can't focus this thing. There we go. So what's new in, let's see, wait, Mom, you're in Michigan? Is that right? Wait, that Mom. Where are you? Ohio or Michigan? Wait. Somebody was in Colorado as well. See, now I'm starting to combine everybody's locations in my head. Reno. Oh, you're in Reno. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Loomis. You're the Loomis story. uh, you have it to this day? Oh, and she said, and time might just take care of it. And actually, I only kind of saw at. No, it wasn't Josh. Josh is in Wisconsin. He's in the. I'm familiar with he's at. Yeah. Yeah, the flashes of light weren't really prevalent today, although I haven't really been out and about too much. I went to the Home Depot. And maybe I saw them once or twice, but at nighttime is when they're brilliant. That's actually kind of cool because at night in the dark room, I can sit there and move my eyes and see some pretty cool color flashes along the edges. Well, that's not a diagnosis for you, Bat Mom, but now you might know a little more information as to where they might be coming from. The retina, though, that's a pretty important part of the eyeball, to make sure that there's nothing else going on. John, I went home with a waitress the way I always do. How was I to know she was with the Russians too? What? What? Are you Ukrainian, John? Wait, what? I went home with a waitress the way I always do. How was I to know she was with the Russians too? Is that from a movie? What the heck? Or am I missing something? Northwoods. Speaking of Wisconsin, what do you call people from Wisconsin, Northwoods? Wisconsinians? Wait, Wisconsins? Whiskies? Cheeseheads? Isn't that what you guys wear? They wear at the football games, Green Bay games, the cheese hats on top of their head. Yeah, cheeseheads. Okay, that is what they call 'em. What's new with your apple trees? Are the bears still um, giving you problems or Bat Mom Regular John? Well, that's was it our is it an old one? An old hemorrhage? Did you mention your flash of light and so on? That sounds like kind of fits. Oh, the apples are all gone. Oh, cool. Can you eat raccoons? I'd imagine you can, huh? You know, I was going to elaborate on a some more medical stories, and then I ended up telling about how I got into the Navy, which is associated, but um, cool. You know, the last memory I have of my uh, cousins, my aunt and uncle in I mentioned before that population of 103 or 106 in Brussels, Illinois. As a, I think we were teenagers visiting uh, with the family, and they got boys and girls, and so do we. And we all go out. The boys would take us out on their scooters through the cornfields, and half horseflies land in our hair, and the cornfields tear us up. But they would fly through them. Almost to us, it was blind, but they apparently knew where they were going. And then they would take us out hunting, my dad and I and brother. And yeah, I was going to say any type of trauma, typically, you know, floaters and hemorrhage and anything to do with the eyeball is a result of trauma. It does happen spontaneously, i.e., what I just experienced. I'm going to say it's probably my age. Um, but yeah, that's like the very first thing they examined, or one of the very first things they examined after I was back home was I had an eye doctor appointment to follow up with, and they look at your retina and everything and start, you know, making sure your eyeballs all intact inside. So bleeding and floaters and all that is not unusual after head trauma or any kind of assault to the head, whether it's from a fall or by a person. Yep, yep, yep. Oh, I was saying, what was I saying? Northwoods, yeah, was they'd take us out hunting there in Illinois, and they were catching squirrels. So mom could make squirrel soup. And of course, us city kids are like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna make?" But she would make I ended up having it, and it was delicious. She would make a split pea soup with squirrel meat, and it was the bomb. I mean, but I remember we'd go out with 22s. The boys would go out with 22s and be showing my dad and us, "See that squirrel up there?" And we're like, "No, what are you looking at?" And they're like, "Take an aim," and then thunk, and watch this squirrel fall out of the branches. I remember them saying, "You see that? You see him up there?" I'm like, "No, what are you looking at?" What was it like growing up in the 60s and 70s? Actually, 70s and 80s, Tom. Um, although, no, 60s and 70s. 60s, I was born, so I mean, I was only little. But my first real memories of like growing up were, yeah, I guess it was late 60s, specifically, but mostly the 70s. 70s, yeah, the 70s. Yeah. It was awesome. I remember playing football out in the street, telephone pole to telephone pole. I had to be in by 5 sharp, or I'd get the wrath of my dad. Mom made sure that happened. So it was like don't get in trouble. And so my brother, and he was the eldest, was always making sure that, reminding us what time it was. So 10 minutes to 5, 5 minutes to 5, we'd all go running in, make sure we're at the dinner table. Um, Watching TV, the classic shows, after school shows, Leave It to Beaver, um, My Three Sons, cartoons in the morning, uh, channels, what were they? 8, 10, 6, and 13. Channel 39, that was the UHF channel. 39, oh, there was a Spanish channel in Southern California. It was channel 12. Of course, we didn't watch that. 8, 10, 6, 8, 10, 39, I think, and 13. Those were the channels. The TV guide, of course, that was our, what to find out what was playing or what was on at certain times throughout the day. Thomas Brothers maps. I don't know if anybody in southern United States remembers Thomas Brothers. Those were the precursor to Google, but in a binder format. Music, of course, was rock and roll, rhythm and blues, rock, jazz, and oldies, of course, because Mom had it on the 8-track tape player, not 8-track, the VHS machine when I walked in the house after school. Speaking of Otis Redding, people like Otis Redding, the Platters, Elvis, the Silver Fox, what's his name? And my mom loved Wasted Days and Wasted Nights. Good old Freddie Fender. Toys in the 70s were incredible. I remember one toy we had that was like, wow, man, you wouldn't see it on the market now because it would be such a danger. It's such dangerous toys we had, but they were the bomb. There was one that was like this. It was a crank. It was an actual like generator like crank with a handle, and it had a cable, uh, like a twisting propeller cable encased in steel, probably like an eighth inch diameter, that connected from this crank, and it had like a 4-foot cable. At the end of the cable, you attach the cable to a airplane, and it was like a scale biplane, and this thing attached to the side of the cable attached to the side of the airplane, and it was a full scale metal winged, not full scale, but it was a to scale model that actually flew, and it had wheels, landing gear even. And when you crank this handle 4 feet away, you put it like on your flat garage floor. This thing would go, and had a center, what do you want to call it? Island that this cable connected to, and the airplane went around this center point. And the faster you turned the crank, the faster the propeller would turn. And that propeller would propel the airplane in a circle. And this thing would start to just go around super fast. And then you went back on the lever, and it would control the ailerons, and this thing would get airborne. It would sit there and be flying in the air, a foot or 2 feet off the garage floor, and you could hear you're controlling, you're flying this airplane, and you're with this lever, and the further you went back on it, the higher it went. Of course, it had a max, and then you could land the thing back down on the garage floor, and then when you stop cranking, it would stop the propeller, and the thing would go around in a circle a few times before it came to a stop. Oh, that was the incredible. All right, Bat Mom. Thanks for coming in and sharing, putting me back in tears again. But that was awesome. That was good. I actually did that to myself, I'm sure. Do I think pre-internet times were better? It was kind of a little bit of. I remember when the internet kind of first debuted, and a friend of mine, Joe, as a matter of fact, he introduced me to an Atari computer, I think, or no, it was Apple. I think it was Apple. And Atari is the game. I'm thinking of a game station. Atari, yeah. But I think he had an Apple computer. Might have been, I forget. But it just had like a basic program for typing. Where the instructions actually came up on the screen, and the keyboard, where to place your fingers. I actually learned to type with this program. At least finger placement. I'm not too proficient, but I can type. Was it 93 where the internet, the www? Yeah. Well, then this probably wasn't the internet. It was just a computer program, I guess. Yeah, that's what it was. But the internet was just another tool, at the time. Super, like, whoa, sci-fi coming true, or actually video calls where they actually had handheld the handheld phone inside the car. My wife had one in her BMW 320i, and that was like space age. Not the video call. That was just mobile phone. And via video calls didn't come till much later. But that and the internet just became another tool, and then trying to figure out how to use that in your daily life. More or less, more like an encyclopedia, an opportunity to just look up stuff via computer instead of using something paper. The phone book, the white pages, the yellow pages, made things, I guess, easier or quicker. I call it quicker. Tom, thanks for finding me. I don't know how. I probably just popped up on in your search. Let's see, what else about growing up? The music was still via, like I said, either 8-track was kind of before me. That was my dad's era. But then VHS was what I remember. Music, and then of course records. Good old the Licorice Pizza, they called it. That was the name of the record store in Claremont, San Diego, was Licorice Pizza, referring to the black, 33. Is it the 33 LP? It's RPMs, right? 33 RPMs and 78 RPMs. That's the small ones, right? 33 is the large ones. The small ones are 78. I believe so. Having those collections instead of disc CDs or. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And now, interestingly, I've been reading. Yeah, I've been hearing about that. Some young kids are now starting to collect vinyl records again. Yeah, that's what I was hearing. That was kind of cool. I was speaking to it might have been somebody that came in the room here on the live stream, and it was a teenager, and she or he started talking about their vinyl records collection, and I was like, "Huh? What? You're collecting records?" Oh yeah. I said, "Well, that's cool." I said, "You have a player and everything with the needle?" She says, "Yep." I said, "You got to take care of those things." Let's see. Uh, what else about growing up? Oh, music I was mentioning. Um, yeah, records. I ended up winning 5 the small ones, the 78 RPM records. They have a nickname for those. Anyways, I ended up calling in on a radio station. You had to be the 5th caller, or I don't know if you even remember that, but the radio stations would give away prizes if you were the certain caller. The 10th caller, and you had to be the 5th, and I ended up just randomly. I was over at a friend's house, Chris's house, and decided to pick up the phone at his house and try to be the 5th caller on KPRI. That was the name of the radio station. KPRI? No. KPRI was rock. KGB was also rock, and it was KCBQ. Shotgun Tom Kelly, KCBQ. He was the DJ. Shotgun Tom Kelly. I ended up being the 5th caller, and I got 5 78 RPM records. I had to go down to the KCBQ radio station in Santee, California, which was like a 20-minute drive, and then pick up the little certificate and I took it to I think the local licorice pizza and bought 578 RPM records. Let's see, school was I had an elementary school that was just a hop, skip, and a holler around the neighborhood. So we walked there as brothers and sisters. I went there from third grade through sixth grade. I can still remember my teachers' names. Mrs. Hawbaker, who got remarried and became Mrs. McGargy, but I always knew her as Mrs. Hawbaker. We called her Miss Jawbreaker. She was a strict lady. Yes, don't ask why I'm in New Jersey from San Diego. Life events brought me back here. But anyways, the uh, yeah, going down to the radio station, picking up the records. What was I saying? I just went to another subject. How old are you, Tom? If I may ask. 22. You're still a youngster. Actually, you're 3 years older than my youngest boy. He's 19. Um, yeah, what was I saying, Tom? I was talking about the records and music, and then I went on to start another memory of growing up. What was I saying? Oh, school. School. Yeah, elementary school was just around the block or a couple blocks away. Third grade through sixth grade. Oh, Mrs. Jawbreaker or Hawbaker. Third grade and fourth grade with Mrs. Boynton. And then, yeah, thank you. And then fifth grade was, oh, she was one of the best ones. Mrs. Oh, wait, Miss Boynton, then Mrs. Oh my gosh, I forgot her name. And then sixth grade was Mrs. Mazza, Maza. She was an Italian lady. Um, what was fifth grade? Fifth was, oh my gosh, she was like one of the more, well, a lot of the teachers were memorable. Obviously, I'm remembering their names. And then I went to a junior high school, Hale Junior High. Mildred L. Hale was the name of the school, but we call it Hale Junior High, HALE. Seventh grade through ninth grade. Those were memorable years. Uh, Growing up in the public school system, I say that now because I know there's other than the public school system. Kind of more stressful years of my adolescence was that 12 years old through 15. Super self-conscious about the way I looked and the way I dressed and yada yada, and girls and all of the above. And then high school was 10th grade through 12th grade, and that was, as you're starting to grow up even more. And I was playing drums. I was a drummer, percussionist in the marching band, and had my fellow drummer friends became my best friends in school and out of school. The beach, being a Southern California boy, the beach was a big draw. So I wasn't a surfer, but I boogie boarded. All us friends, we all did the same. Going down to the beach, taking the bus down to the beach. And then eventually, once we became of driving age, I was the driver and had my car. So friends piled into my car and we'd go down to the beach. Frisbee, all aspects of the Frisbee sport I got involved in. Actually brought the a friend of mine, the trombone player in the band, actually, and I proposed a beach activities class to be implemented as a physical fitness option class for school. And one of the gym teachers actually jumped on the idea, and he implemented a beach activities class for PE. And of course, a lot of surfers who were surfers enrolled in that class, and the teacher actually took them down to the beach once a week or whatever, and actually got to surf and play sand volleyball and other activity. Frisbee golf was what my friend suggested, and we actually had Frisbee golf tournaments in teams and started competing. High schools playing Frisbee golf on the football field. I don't know if you've ever heard of or going down. Not Frisbee golf. Sorry. It's called Ultimate Frisbee. Is the game that is played on a football field, and then Frisbee golf is actually shooting the frisbees into baskets that are lined with chains, and it would hit the chain and then fall into the basket. It would stop the frisbee and then fall into the basket. And it's played just like golf, the same rules, but on a Frisbee golf course. That became really cool and popular, at least for me and fellow high school friends. I mentioned girls already. Of course, girls was always part of that in one way or another. School, beach, all of the above. Band, the high school band, the marching band. We would go on to tournaments or competitions together on Greyhound bus type buses. Living large on these Greyhound buses instead of on the school buses. And sometimes, most of the time, it was an all-day thing. We would leave early in the morning, 5:30, 6 in the morning, gather at the high school in the dark, and get ready to pack on the buses. Like 3 Greyhound buses full of kids. And then we would travel up north to southern California to go compete against other high schools. And then we'd end up coming back at all hours in the evening, get home by midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, sleeping on the buses, miserable, etc. Sometimes we'd go to amusement parks and compete, i.e. Magic Mountain up in Los Angeles, north of Los Angeles. And we'd have some kind of a Christmas parade or Halloween or Columbus Day or some type of celebration holiday that the marching band was involved in. Again, I was a drummer, that was more in the 70s. Yeah, it was 77 through 80. Doing stupid stuff, as teenagers, and trying not to get in trouble, especially when you start driving, getting pulled over by the police, or smoking pot, or getting away with, things that were illegal. Throwing apples and oranges at city buses and making them lock up their brakes, and it's the most stupidest things we could have been doing. But we were laughing and high-fiving each other like, oh my gosh, did you see that bus? Did you see it? What in the world were we doing? Things you can laugh at now, but getting put in jail for at the time. What else? being out after in the middle of the night when people aren't normally out, especially kids our age, and having police pull us over, like, what are you guys doing out here? Where's your ID? Can we see your ID? We don't have any ID. Well, what's your name? Where do you live? And then when they're done with us, we are told to or advised to go back home. What else? What else? In the 60s, like I said, I was too little. I was born in 62. So up until I was 8 years old, I have memories as a little guy in Southern California. That's kind of where my first memories were developed. Right. It turned out to be right next to my high school. Who would have known that I was going to go to high school one day at that high school? I literally lived 2 city blocks down from the high school, within walking distance. And we ended up moving back to Southern California. But let me elaborate. At that age in the 60s, the next memory was the family moving to Rochester, New York, because my dad worked for General Dynamics Electronics. And he was asked to fill in a supervisor position back in Rochester. A company paid for it. I think they even moved us. And so he accepted the opportunity and moved the whole family back to Rochester, New York. So I have memories of Rochester and growing up in the snow and trying to build igloos in the front yard and snow drifts, 8 feet high. And, those that live back there, especially those in Wisconsin and, that part of the United States, can relate to the weather. So I have memories, trying to walk to school and having mom pick us up because they shut the school down due to weather, or bringing us extra clothes because we got soaking wet on the way to school, playing in the snow, or, picking us up at the nurse's station, or bringing us clothes to the nurse's station and changing. Let's see. Indoor schools, of course, they're all one building. They're not multiple, units or bungalows, just all one brick building with one hallway going down the center of the school, the entire length of the school, from the kindergarten end down to the 6th grade end. I spent kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade in Rochester. So give you an idea how old I was, up until I was 7. And then we moved back the company moved him back to San Diego. So we all followed. And we ended up living, like I said, within that same general area that I moved away from, very close to my elementary school and high school. Junior high was about a mile and a half away, but I'm getting there. Let's see, elementary school in Rochester, like I said, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Yeah, I still got pictures of me. I'm pointing down at my family album down there of my 1st grade. Oh my gosh, are you going to make me pull it out? Maybe I won't. Yeah, wait, a little bit of nostalgia here. I've done it before, so might as well break out the 1st grade picture that my mom saved and put together for us. Let's see here. Is it in this album? No, it's in another one, I think. Yeah, it's not going to be in this one. Oh, anyways. Speaking of, hey, growing up in the 60s and 70s, I got a one of those in the birthday card section, at the store. Somebody or I found 1962, remember when? And I got to read some of the things to you. It's even fun for me to read. Oh, it's like my mom got it for me. I see my mom's handwriting here. She's addressed it to me from mom. August 19th, that's my birthday, 2005. So this was almost 20 years ago. And it tells all the things that were happening the year I was born and the price of things. This is interesting. But anyways, let me get back to what I was saying. So yeah, from Rochester is when I started developing, some of those memories that I can recall to this day about school, the weather, the home, um, friends, things that you did. Um, yeah. And then when I moved back to San Diego, I was in third grade all the way through sixth grade. I already mentioned that was elementary and then junior high, high school. And I pretty much spent the rest of my childhood and the beginning of my adult life in San Diego, California. Started going to college, or at least delved into, didn't know what I was doing in college, but I attended a few classes for a year and then ended up in the workforce. And not until later in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, did I discover emergency medicine and ended up going down that road. And then that eventually took me into the military and applied my paramedic position license into the military. So I did both. I was a civilian paramedic and a Navy corpsman for an 8-year reserve program. So yeah, 1962. Check it out. I'll quiz you on what do you think was type questions. Here in 1962, in October, the USA and USSR faced a major confrontation as the Soviet Union attempts to move offensive nuclear missiles into Cuba. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? See, I don't remember. I only remember hearing about it and learning about it because I was just born. Burundi, Algeria, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, and Western Samoa gained their independence. Israel hangs Adolf Eichmann. The U.S. loans $100 million to the United Nations to help its financial crisis. And then the U.S. commitment to Vietnam grows as troop strength is increased to 8,000 men. President Kennedy gives the order to U.S. troops to fire on the Viet Cong if they encounter hostile fire. I've got brief memories of the Vietnam conflict, only as a little guy. And I remember my mother turning off the TV because the newscast was coming on with inappropriate footage of the Vietnam War. And you've probably heard about that even today. You might even seen movies, if you've ever seen the movie, The Greatest Beer Run Ever. If you haven't, you got to go see it or got to rent it or see it on Netflix or wherever. The Greatest Beer Run Ever. I was going in for some skin at a dermatologist treatment, and the assistant that was treating me asked me if I've ever seen that movie, and she told me you got to see it. It's one of those sleepers. Incredible, great movie. It'll hit on this whole era that I'm talking about. Kind of before my time or what was going on when I was born type time. And it talks about these events. The TV being turned off. How the broadcasts were inappropriate. They never have shown that type of stuff on public television. So I do have a memory of my mom doing that, but I never saw, what I know now of. And I saw the moon landing in 1969. Yeah, I wouldn't know for sure, but I think General Americans thought Vietnam was boring, paid attention to other. Yeah, well, that's they kind of. If you got to see this movie, just see it. It is so well done that they put little clips of what you're talking about and what I just mentioned into the movie. It's like you got to look at it and don't leave the television, or at least pause it, and don't miss. And I've actually watched it 3 or 4 times and picked up little more things each time I watched it. And you'll really get a kick out of, because it recreates a moment in history through an event that happened based on a true event. And it's called The Greatest Beer Run Ever. You got to see it. Got to see it. Now that we're talking about this, it hits on all these things that we're mentioning right now. It's really good. And that it actually happened is even weirder. It's like, whoa, really? Somebody actually did this? They made, I'm gonna without spoiling the movie, somebody made the greatest beer run ever during the Vietnam conflict. True story. And you got to see the movie. I won't say any more than that. Yeah, go. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on. I think I found it on. It wasn't Netflix. I don't think it's on Netflix yet. It may be. You can look. Apple Plus or something. It's on the smart TV. One of those apps. On the. Just look for it. The greatest beer run ever. But they mentioned, or they hit on a segment about what the families were doing while the conflict was going on. You know, what Americans chose to do to keep their minds off of, what was actually going on the other side of the world. Except, of course, those that had loved ones involved in it directly. But then again, the the workforce was in full swing, during war, and that typically happens even today. You will see defense contractors and those other companies that are involved, either directly or indirectly, in full swing when there's a conflict going on, when we are either directly involved and or indirectly involved. Those that employment is, is in full swing. I ended up working for General Dynamics Electronics, the company that I mentioned. My dad, imagine that. Yeah, General Motors, all of them. Incredible. The amount of, now that I've been to war, I was in Iraq 2004, 2005, and I saw those cog wheels in motion, and I really didn't get to see all of them, but I was part of it. And I started realizing, oh, we're getting a shipment in of MREs, or we're getting a shipment in of food, or we're getting a shipment in of water. And you're like, where's this come from? And then I'm starting to hear, or a fellow corpsman took me down to this department. I was in the middle of the dirt next to the Euphrates River, but we occupied 3 buildings. Not sure to this day what those buildings were. It was a first deck and second deck, upstairs, downstairs. Rooms on the top, rooms on the bottom. And these rooms were occupied by Army and Marines and Navy. And they had different, we had the different departments, the communications center, the medical department, the logistics, security, da 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 da. And they all had their own part of the building. And he took me to this one part where it was like the logistics part of where all the communication and how things were being ordered, the communications back to the different parts, the different vendors, the USA or the foreign suppliers. And I started like, oh, I never saw that before. Oh yeah, I guess it would take somebody to be able to communicate back home and fly a shipment of food and or equipment either by plane, train, or automobile. I'm loosely saying that, to get this stuff to the other side of the world. Where do the dentist equipment and the doctor's equipment and the surgery equipment and food and transportation, like you said, it takes everybody. It doesn't just take military personnel to have a war. I.e., I was a civilian that came into the military to apply my civilian skill set into the military. I wasn't an 18, 19-year-old. I was 37 years old when I joined the Navy because I was a civilian. And so it's like you start to see like this huge machine in motion. Think about what it takes to support 178,000 troops at the time that I went over there. That was the number. 178,000 troops was over in Iraq. Oh, civilian. I've been told, Tom, that this program that I entered in at, it was called APG, Advanced Pay Grade, has not necessarily APG, but bringing civilian experience into the military has been going on since World War II. And I was like, I think the recruiter told me this. And I went, I had no clue. It's like you said, I was kind of stuck in a bubble, but yet this other part of living has been going on for a long time. And as a matter of fact, it's necessary. It's not just, it's that whole logistics part. Unless you're in that part of school from a civil engineering maybe background, and you start to see what it takes to build a city or to support a war. How do you support 178,000 people? You need everything from toilet paper to toothbrushes to food to water to sleeping facilities, waste management, well, that's all kind of goes together. Human waste and physical waste. How do you support that when you're over in the middle of the desert? Well, you got to dig a dump, and you got to dig a gray water treatment area. And they had both of those at our little FOB in the middle of the dirt next to the Euphrates River. It was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a giant camp, a high-speed camp. Even though we were considered to be you could call it that, a primitive aid station. We didn't really have a whole lot. We couldn't do a whole lot for anybody except take care of your lumps, bumps, and bruises and start an IV on you, but then send you somewhere else because the person's not going to do or get better in my hands. I can stop the bleeding and provide an airway, but as far as anything further than that, you're in the wrong hands. You're not going to get better in my hands. And so what do? You ship them out. You get them on a vehicle to start, to get them to some air transportation and get them the heck out of Dodge to a much higher level of care. And that's going to be in Germany or the United States. And so it was like, I got to be part of that. And it was pretty cool when you could safely think about it that way. I was 123 Marines out of Houston, Texas. That was the unit that I was assigned to. I was a Navy reservist as a corpsman. I'm pointing to my hat because this is the Iraq, that hat the Marine Corps. I was able to wear the Marine uniform that the corpsmen, the Navy corpsmen, are able to wear when they're embedded in the Marines. Navy provides medical support for the United States Marines. I didn't even know that until I joined. and then I got educated. So because of that, because I was a reservist and I was what they call blue side, meaning I was on the Navy side for most of my 8-year career. Navy blue representing the water, they call that blue side, but the Navy also provides medical support for the, I'm pointing to my hat. You can barely see it in this. Let me get rid of that. The Marine Corps side is green side for obvious reasons. They're camis that they wear. So a Navy corpsman can either be blue side or green side, or you could do both. It was kind of like what I did. I was blue side for 7 of the 8 years that I was in the Navy, providing medical support for the Navy. But when I got deployed to Iraq, they took my name and put me with the Marine Corps over in Iraq. So I was just another corpsman providing medical support. I don't know how many corpsmen there were. There were 600 in the battalion, thereabouts. So, however many, one corpsman per, I'm going to guess, 20 Marines. So divide that by, it's 300 corpsmen. Is that 300? No, 30. 30 times 20, 30 times 10, 300. Yeah. So it'd be like 30 corpsmen with a battalion of 600 Marines. I think I did my math right? Yeah. 300 times 10 is, 30 times 10 is 300. 30 times, yeah. So, 30 times 20 is 600. So I went to Iraq for a total of 10 months. Over in Iraq was 7 months, but from beginning to end, it was a total of 10 months, thereabouts, 10 or 11 months. I think it was May 2004 to April 2005. Yep, 11 months, just under a year. With the logistics of getting everybody their immunizations and getting ready to go to Iraq, we spent about 2 months doing that. And then when I got back, I spent another month demobilizing, just the whole paperwork. They shipped me back to California, and yet my wife's in Philadelphia, so it's like, Gary needs to get back to the East Coast, and they're like, no problem, we'll change your orders, and book you a flight to get back there. So I ended up back in California, but then they flew me back to the East Coast to be with my 8-month pregnant wife. So yeah, I was just there to provide medical support, embedded in the 123rd Marines out of Houston, Texas. And that's when I was considered green side. I was full-time for approximately a year, where the other 7 years of my contract, I was part-time as a reservist, doing 1 weekend per month at a Navy air station in Oxnard, California, Point Mugu. And they also worked in conjunction with Port Hueneme, which is just 20 miles up the road. There's 2 different stations. Where are you? Yes, I'm sorry, MREs, and I said that so freely as if everybody knows what they are. Meals ready to eat is an MRE. Yeah, back in Vietnam, they called them rations. But MREs are like high-speed rations. they're the internet version of a ration. With the all the selections and food groups, and they got beef stew and Chinese chow mein and eggs for breakfast, and you name it. There's some variation of the meal that you can choose from. Oh, chicken and noodles, those were the bomb. Anything with real chunks of meat were always preferred. They got, double fudge brownies and Tabasco sauce and coffee and um, coffee, instant coffee and or Gatorade type powder. Turn your water. You can turn your Camelback, into bug juice. They called it. Anything that's got sugar in it's called bug juice because it attracts bugs. Um, so you get that in your stomach, and at least you're, you know, somewhat satisfied with a variety on the menu instead of and of course, the little chiclet bubble gum chewing gum pack that's always thrown in there. But other than MREs, that's usually when you don't have time or the facilities to, have a hot meal. Which there's one guy in here, Josh. He can attest to having ate his share of MREs, and they can get old pretty quick, and they can stuff you up and constipate you pretty well as well. So that's why us corpsmen actually are always pushing water on the troops. Make sure you guys drink till you can't drink anymore. And then when you're done, drink a little bit more. It's just make yourself pee. That's the whole concept, especially with MREs. I mean, that's just getting yourself hydrated helps with both exits. Number one and number two. And typically if somebody's constipated and or they're dehydrated, or they're suffering from a headache, there's the best sign and symptom. If they got a headache or you're constipated, it's usually because you're not drinking enough water. And so that's like the first thing we ask them, how much water you been drinking? And of course they lie and say, oh, I've been drinking plenty, doc. They call you doc. That's why I use doc as my name. The Marines call you doc. Whether you're a doc or not, you're doc. A doctor, that is. Yeah, water and Motrin are like the two biggest things that we hand out while over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. Water and Motrin. Because they've got a headache because they haven't been drinking enough water. Number one cause of a headache, dehydration. Water, water, water. So who's still here? Anybody still listening to my my rhetoric? Oh, I have the 1962 book still in my hand. Here's some cool information. Oh, what do you think the price of what is this? Oh my gosh, this is an Audi or a Peugeot or something? What the heck? Renault. A Renault. See this little car here? See? Oh, well, you can barely see it. I got to get rid of the background. Hold on. Let me get rid of that background there. I've never even, this isn't even a US car, but what am I doing? Oh, I'm turning off the virtual background. See if I can do this here. Okay. All right. See that little car right there? The Renault? I think somebody's laying on top of it there. Or no, what is that? Oh, it's a guy standing behind it. That little car. What do you think that car, the cost of that car in 1962? That's a Renault, by the way. Renault. Renault. East of the, I'm sorry, west of the, what does it say? West of the Mississippi and east of the Pacific. Anywhere in the U.S. But anyways, the cost of that car. What do you think it was in 1962? Anybody still there? Tom, are you still there? What do you think that car cost in 1962? I'll tell you, it was $1,395. Oh, here's some people that are the same age as I am. How about Sheryl Crow, singer, Matthew Broderick, entertainer, Rosie O'Donnell, well, that's nothing to be proud of, entertainer, Ali Sheedy, and Roger Clemens, baseball player. Oh, Demi Moore, Jim Carrey, and Garth Brooks. Cost of living in 1962. A new house cost $12,550. Oh my gosh, you can't even buy a car for that much money. The average income per year here in the United States, what do you think the average income was in 1962? 12,500, I'm sorry, $5,556 per year. $5,556. Goodness gracious. Oh, wait a minute. What kind of a background is that? I just chose. Oh, that's a racing. Oh, it's kind of broken there. Tom, are you still there? Tom York. Tom. How about Kuya, Joey? You still hanging out back there, brother? How about Josh? Josh, what happened to you? Are you eating dinner? It's about that time. Actually, you know what I might do? I might call the live stream or shorten the live stream for the afternoon and then come back on tomorrow at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. I normally am trying to do this on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Today was kind of just a farce and thought that I would come on and occupy a few hours with chat with you guys, with you good people. But yeah, thank you guys, gals, for being part of this and all the questions. And Otis, Northwoods, if you're still back there, Bat Mom, she had to go. Josh, of course. And all the rest of you, past, present. Joey, I'll be back on tomorrow, 10 p.m. Hopefully, if I don't forget, like I did Monday. Magnus. Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys. Again and again and again. And as you were, later, guys. See ya. Wouldn't wanna be ya. Dun 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 dun.